Hey folks, I'm just gonna play a little bit while everybody enters the meeting. So if you like playing along with whatever you're doing, that's cool too. All right. Hello everybody, here we are again. Time to do fiddle stuff. Time to play. Good to see you all. And sorry you're all muted just to keep it a little less chaotic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to answer some questions I got, and depending on the time we have, I'll answer more from people who are here. If there's any problem with any technical stuff, just send a chat. And you may notice somebody named Yuri Manning attending. She's a co-host helping out with technical stuff. She's also our fearless editor for the videos, and she's a big part of what makes FiddleHed work. So thanks to her for being here. And so, well, there's a bunch of questions that were submitted. Thank you for submitting. I'm just going to jump into it so we can get to as many questions and maybe have time for some random extra questions. All right. So I'm not going to be seeing the chat. If you have a technical problem, I think Yuri will do it. I'm going to be looking at the questions, just so you know. So, okay. The first question was from, oh, and by the way, another housekeeping thing. When I answer a question, I'm going to open up the floor if anybody has a follow-up question to go along with the particular question, okay? So you'll see how it goes. All right, so cool, here we go. The first question is from Tara in North Carolina. She asked, do you ever cheat your finger positions on the fiddle? So what she's asking about in particular is going from A3 to D3. So first off, I wanted to see if Tara was in yet. I don't think she is, but, oh, there you are. So let's see. Give me a sec. I want to see if Tara could ask the question better than me. So I'm looking for you, Tara. Yuri, do you see Tara? Wave your hand if you, there we go. Okay, gotcha. So we got you spotlighted, and let me just unmute you. Hold on a sec. Yuri, can you unmute her, Tara? Okay, great. Can you say your question now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was playing Tennessee Waltz, your duet, and there was one part where I had to jump from A3 to D3, and it was a challenge because my finger had to like hop over the string. And so what I did was I kept my third finger on A3, but then I used my second finger for D3, and I cheated, and it worked, and it was wonderful, and I went fast. I was able to keep the pace, but then I felt guilty for using the wrong finger, and I just wondered, is that common, or is that completely taboo to do things like that?
Good question. And first off, starting at the end of your question,
By the
it's
way, I did learn how to go from A3 to D3, but I did.
you did learn how to do it with the third finger. Oh, okay. So it's a good
I did.
question, and you asked, is it completely taboo? And I would say definitely not. There's a lot of amazing musicians, fiddlers, and any instrument where people have learned to do something quite unconventional to get to the point of making music. Remember that the ultimate point is making music. So if something works for you, then maybe that's good.
Okay.
However, I think that a lot of the basic forms are really helpful, and they exist for a reason because they work. So I would say, like, if you find a solution that works, then just go with it, but continue to try to do more the proper form. And so your question in particular is about going from A3 to D3. And so if you're moving slowly, you can shift the finger to each string. But in your example, you need to go more quickly. And so you need to be able to hold that finger across both strings. And so normally I try to get, the form is you land more on the fingertips. But for this, you're going to want to go more flat to get
Oh,
both. And by the way, this is not hard. This is hard. Sorry, this is hard because the tuning of it is hard. If you try the double stop, you'll see that it's quite challenging. And so I'm just going to go ahead and add, like now, Tara, I'm going to just say how you could practice it, even though it sounds like you got it. But basically what you would do is you'd first get really good at finding these two notes. And in this case, you might want to drone one or two of the notes. I would pick, so they were going from a D note to a G note. I would probably drone a G. So you have a reference. Let me lower that. So you would start by just moving it and then speeding this up and see if you can do it in tune. And then you try the thing where you flatten it. It's not an extreme flattening like guitar. It's more of a, see if I can get the angle right. I'll try this way. Oops. Ah, shoot. Yuri, if you could fix that. We don't want participants. Forgot to change that setting. Okay. All right. So where was I? So there it is flattened. Hopefully that makes sense.
yep.
Okay. So anyway, let me get back to my notes here on this. So anyway, once you get this in your ear doing separate notes, then you would hold it down and try it that way. You may want to also do this with, it might be a little easier to start with first finger. It's kind of like, for those of you who play guitar or mandolin, it's kind of, this kind of thing is done a lot, sometimes called a bar chord in guitar, but we're only doing it on two strings. And so I want to circle back just to your question, Tara, about cheating and so forth. And it's definitely not a cheat, but the form will be better in the long run. And also being able to do it will just give you a little bit more flexibility. You won't be too locked into one way of doing it. In general, just try practicing things in different ways. You may think you have something, you may think you have a tune, but you could always try starting it up bow instead of down bow, doing it with slurs instead of not slurs, to just kind of continue to experiment.
Okay.
So anyhow, so I'm now, let's just see, is there anybody who's got thanks for your question, Tara.
Sure.
And I'm glad you figured it out. Does anybody have a follow-up question about that particular finger thing of having your planting your finger across the strings, moving and being able to play that in tune. So going once. All right. Good to see you all, by the way. All right, so cool. I'm going to move on to the next question. And so, and by the way, as opposed to, let me know about, here's a question for you guys. This is the office hours. It's more about trying to answer your questions. As opposed to a group lesson, which is more about playing. But one thing that comes to mind is maybe this would be more fun or helpful if you had a little bit of playing time. But for now, that's what's going on. We're trying to do that. Okay, we're trying to just focus on questions. All right, so this next question comes from Lori. I don't see her here, so maybe I'll get to her question a little later. Karen from Vancouver. Karen here. Let's see, Karen. She had a good question that I wanted to see. Who else is here? Is Mark here? Is Mark from California here? All right, well, it looks like some of the people who asked the questions aren't here, but I kind of came up with some good answers, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this next question, which from Karen in Vancouver asked, how can I reach the fourth finger high enough without moving the other fingers? So she's learning the fourth finger, and here is her problem. She says that when she's fingering the fourth finger, she's got to stretch it, and she's having difficulty stretching it, and so she ends up shifting her hand up. Does that make sense? I don't know if any of you have learned fourth finger, but when you do that stretch, there's kind of something that I haven't taught yet that I want to teach now on how to deal with this fourth finger thing. The first thing is to just build up strength with the fourth finger and flexibility. So you'd first want to play the fourth finger and isolate it and really work it, maybe for a week or two. And so this note is a B note, so you could play with a B drone. Let's go ahead and do a little bit, add that a little bit. And so you'd first, in order to get the reach, you first want to strengthen it, and so you would work on just playing it. All right? And then you're trying to play it in tune, trying to get it solid, and then you could do a little pedal pattern for to open E. Right? Okay. So once you've built up a little bit of the strength with the fourth finger, then the next step to working on the stretch is to play E3, which is A, and then lift the other two fingers. So this is something I haven't really taught a lot of, but if you're really struggling, like ideally you'd want to be able to keep all these fingers down when you play the fourth finger anywhere. But if you're having trouble with that, then start by lifting the first two, but keeping the third down. And then now, see if you can do that stretch. And then you'll build a lot more flexibility with that. This is also something you can practice, like a lot of things, without even playing. Just set down your bow and practice doing it. Maybe practice it on other strings, and then go back to playing. But sometimes when you're not playing the music, you can do this with anything, even like fingering a tune. There's something that you focus purely on the physical aspect, and you're not even having to listen to it. It can be powerful because you can be like, oh yeah, I really need to do this, and I need to curve my finger, and so anyhow. So, and then if you've gotten that down, you can start to play with fingering up to it. And actually fingering with open 1, 2, 3, 4 is a little easier. And then doing low second would be a little harder. So anyway, that's roughly the answer for this with fourth finger. There's a lot more exercises you can do to build on that. But to kind of sum up, you start by playing just that isolated fourth finger on the E, building some strength, some flexibility, then E3 to 4, and then walking up to it. Okay, so cool. Does anybody have any follow-up questions on fourth finger? I see Henry. Okay. All right. Hold on.
Got it.
I'm muting you. Having trouble
There we
unmuting
go.
you.
Got it.
Did you do it? Sorry, did you do it
Yeah, I went
yourself?
to. I think we kept crossing the mute on mute. I'm off.
Oh,
I think I'm talking.
yeah.
One, thank you. That was actually one of my questions, or well, was
Oh,
my
good.
question was fourth finger exercises. So thank you for that. It's best to start on the E string because I've been incorporating it. I notice as um, it's still a learning curve on all the strings, but I notice say going to the D string with the fourth finger is tougher if that's the proper grammar there.
Yeah.
So it's best to start on the E.
For sure, 100%. I always have people start on the E. It gets progressively harder. Well, there's a couple reasons. It's a bigger stretch because you're coming around more, and so there's more of a stretch. But also, the strings are thicker down here. They need more. Takes more strength, and so it's definitely like you build it up on the E, and then you would practice it on the A. Do that a bit. And then when you start doing it on the A, I recommend returning to doing it on the E. But then you kind of keep going back and forth. And then so whatever you did on the E string, then you start to do it on the A string. And then you can do things where you sequence exercises across both strings, like. So this is the power of transposition, transposing stuff. You do it anything like a tune or even like two notes. And then as you do other strings, you could do the same thing. So that's like a mega exercise, kind of like you can just build your own exercises from little simple bits that you can transpose and then so but anyway and then just one other thing, like if you have a like Hobart's transformation is a tune I teach for fourth finger, so that's kind of the key part. You could transpose that to other strings once you start doing it on A and then on D, right? Okay, so cool, thanks for the follow-up question.
Well, thank you.
Any other follow-up questions about fourth finger? Oh, we see Tom. Great. Try to unmute yourself because I'm having trouble.
Okay, there. How's that?
Gotcha.
Okay, I guess because fourth finger on the other strings is just open on the one above, and I could see you'd want to do that if you want to do a vibrato if you get to that point, but otherwise, is it just a matter of, like, how do you choose whether to go, let's say, fourth on D versus open A?
Good question. Great question. So I'll say it again. How do you choose, like, and just to make clear to everybody, what he's saying is that when you play fourth finger on D, that's an A note. It's the same pitch as open A. So how do you decide? So there's a couple main reasons. The first would be it basically has to do with what's practical for the tune. Say you're doing a tune which is just like you had a part of it was, so it may be just easier to not, especially if you're going fast. That's a lot harder, right? Does that make sense? Like for certain speed things, it would be really hard to go to the open A. But sometimes it'd be easier to go to the open A. Say you're going up into like the A string. Then it makes maybe more sense because it's awkward to go 3, 4, 1. It's a little maybe. All right, so it's basically a matter of what's practical in terms of the fingering, and one consideration is speed. The other is like tone. So if you do play like fourth on, and you have it really well in tune on D4 versus open A, it might be hard to tell the difference in the tone, but the open A is sharper. It's not sharp like too high, but it's just got a crisper sound, and there's something nice about and rich about the fourth finger tone. So a lot of classical players like to, favor the fourth finger. Can you guys hear the difference? I'm not sure that the sound quality is good enough, but anyway, that's one way to look at it, is that whatever's expedient. So for certain long notes, people want to have like use the fourth, maybe use vibrato if you know it, and then what ends up happening is if it's well in tune, it resonates the open A2 and it creates a really rich sound. All right.
Okay. I kind of rely on the open string as a home base each time to get me back in tune again, because by the time you wander up to the fourth finger, that open string is going to be always in tune. And so to me, it always sounds better because I have a hard time landing that fourth finger.
Yeah, and that's a good point for practicing fourth finger. Is another good point is that thanks for your question, is that if you're doing it's hard to learn fourth finger, and so what you do is you leverage the open string to help you. So say you're trying to get fourth on D, you practice D3 to 4. But then you do D3 to open A, because you've tuned your violin, hopefully, and you know that pitch is correct. It helps you correct your fourth, right? Is that right? No? Okay, it's better. So for learning fourth finger on those other strings, yeah, it's very good to use the open string. Keep returning to it, like you said. Okay, cool. See, any other questions on the fourth finger? Okay. I don't see any. Oh, there we go. Frank's fiddle. You might have to unmute yourself, Frank. Yeah, I think so. You're good.
Hi, thanks again for doing this. Hi, everybody. Not really a question. It's just that I found that I got better with the fourth finger when I realised that I've actually got my wrist in a better position, because I was playing the E string, the lower strings, and I was sort of show you my violin with my fiddle. I was tilting my wrist as I was going up and down the strings, and when I tried to get to the fourth on here, my wrist was in the wrong position, so I couldn't stretch across. So I had to change my wrist position, so I was actually playing up and down the strings rather than playing across them. So that was my technical.
So you basically brought your arm around.
Just a tiny fraction, just turned it a little bit, and I had to change the position of my fiddle as well because I couldn't get my arm into the position. So I found for me that all came from the shoulder rest. The shoulder rest was in the wrong place, so the fiddle was in the wrong place, and I was having to play down here because the fiddle was too low. I was having to play down here, and I couldn't get my wrist back. So I just changed the position slightly so I could it was only a quarter of an inch turn on my wrist, and I could get my finger across to the top of the G string with the fourth finger.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's like a great detail. Thanks, that I overlooked, is like maybe there's something in a person's hold, like you were saying, which makes it harder. Like if your elbow's too far underneath, it may be hard, and so you may just need to do some kind of adjustment in order to reach that. All right, very cool. All right, thanks. That's cool. I'm glad we did that question. There was, because the person who asked it, I don't think they're here, but you guys all had great follow-up questions. So, okay, cool. So I'm going to move on. We're going to just continue, and we'll just continue. Technical difficulties. Thanks for your patience. So I'm just going to finish the answer about fiddle endings, and basically you can use parts of tunes. And so I ended with doing something from Arkansas Traveler. If you were in G, you could also do the same ending, but you would just start on D3. And I'm just going to offer a few more that I think are fun and that you could do. So one would be Arkansas. You could create an ending from Blackberry Blossom. So I don't know if anybody have done that. Any of you have done that tune, but so I just created an ending that's not exactly that, but built from that. So all I did was continue the pattern of from Blackberry Blossom. I'm going to do it really slowly now, though. Here we go. All right. And I'm just going to give you one more ending from another tune I do a lot of. So I don't even know the name of this tune, but basically the beginning of it could be used as an ending. So all right. So that's it. Fiddle endings. I'll do it again somewhere else better without all kinds of crazy interruptions. So thank you all for your patience, for hanging out, and I'm just going to continue. Give me a sec. Okay. So moving on to the next question. Is Sarah from Austin, Texas here? Let's see. See Sarah from Austin? No? Okay. So I'll get to her question if I have time later. Let's see. Is Mary from Georgia here? Georgia, the state. Georgia, the state, not the country. So Mary, could you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, at my jam the other night, folks were talking about the 1 minute bow exercise, where you keep the bow going continuously across the string for 1 minute. Have you heard of that? And is it useful to try?
Good question. And I had not heard of it until you asked your question. So thanks for asking. And I looked it up, and basically the short answer is that doing long bows is very good for your playing. Even though in fiddle playing, a lot of the fiddling can be done with short bows. Getting good at a long bow will make you a more versatile player and give you just more flexibility, and it'll really teach you about bowing. And so I actually looked up the 1 minute bow, and what the idea is that you're able to do one bow stroke and have it take a minute long. All right, which is very hard to do well. I looked up a few people trying it, and it didn't sound that great. But I think the point of doing it is not to like actually do it, but to be better aware of bow economics, how you use the bow and how to use the resource of the bow. So just like other economic things, you know, you want to balance and best use those resources, like money or your time. And so what I've done for your question, Mary, is I have another bow which I taped off very poorly using finger tape into quarters. All right, so And basically to get to the point of doing one bow in 60 seconds, there's a methodology you can take. But even if you don't get to 60 seconds, this is a very good way to improve your bowing. So what we're going to basically do is I would recommend starting by playing in each quarter of the bow and getting kind of comfortable with how it works in each quarter. So like we're playing the low quarter, then in the next quarter, then in the next quarter, and in the next quarter. In each quarter, you could do the same thing, maybe a tune or a piece of a tune, you know, like, and then maybe do that on the top quarter, and then on this quarter, and then on the bottom quarter. So in order to do that really long bow, the 1 minute bow, start by getting really comfortable with each quarter of the bow, all right, doing various things. And then when it comes time to doing it actually, you could start by doing multiples of four seconds or more. So basically you would start by doing 1 second for each quarter and use a timer. So I'm just running through how to do it now. I'm actually going to pull up a timer and I'm going to set a stopwatch. I'm just going to start the stopwatch roughly and try to, and I don't have a way to put it on the screen. Maybe we'll add that in a follow-up video for this. But basically I'm starting now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 6, 7, 8, 1, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's only doing 4-second bows versus 60-second bows. However, that's powerful because it's going to really get you, wow, just to do it as evenly as possible. Hopefully that makes sense. So that alone is a great exercise. But now what you would do next is do a bigger increment of 4, since we have this divided into 4. So you could do 8-second bow. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you would do 12 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then just continue 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. Getting harder. It's starting to be a little rocky in the sound. Let's go to like 20 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on. So eventually you try to do like when you start getting into the realm of like 30 or 32, 40, it starts to not, for me, sound as good. So if I try to do 32-second bow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I think you get the idea. It's kind of a ridiculous thing, but it's kind of a cool practice thing to really gain awareness of the bow. All right. So do you have any follow-up questions, Mary?
Well, the first time I tried it, I was like 23 seconds and down the whole bow. So I'm working on it but I think it will give me more control.
Did you try sectioning off the bow?
I haven't. I need to do that, but I haven't tried that yet.
Because you'll really learn like where you speed up and where you favor.
Right. Yeah.
Like I know that playing this is a little bit more difficult for most people, including me. It's a little harder to play down here and get a good sound. And so one way to get better at longbows is to really focus on what's hard. You know, you may want to just practice here a little bit. difficult to kind of get the right balance because there's a lot more weight from your hand.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
the middle is kind of the sweet spot for most people. And then the tip usually needs a little bit of work because it's awkward. Your hand is really far out. And you have to add a little bit of more pressure because there's I don't know, I can't explain the physics of it, but it has to do with torque. There's less like force pressing down like naturally from the weight of your arm, and so you have to add a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyhow, hopefully that helps. Does anybody else have any questions on the 1 minute bow? Okay. Okay, cool. I don't see anybody. All right, so I'm gonna move on. Thank you all for your patience. Let's see. So Tom from Canada, from Oliver, Canada. Is that you, Tom? Okay, unmute yourself and ask your question. About strings, right? Hold on. One sec. There
Okay.
you go.
All right.
Thanks.
So I came across some older fiddles a few months ago, a couple from a garage sale, and then my niece has one from her great grandfather, and some of those were from turn of the century. And so the strings on them were kind of ratched up. They've been sitting unused for like between 20 and 40 years. So I had to restring them. And so I was fishing around, well, what kind of strings should I buy? And I know on your site, you mentioned dominant strings and helicore strings. I guess my question is, which do you prefer, or do you use different ones on different fiddles? My understanding is helicore strings are a bit more faster response, and a lot of fiddle players prefer those, but I don't know how subtle or how obvious that is. And I guess that was the first part of my question. The other part was how often, if other than finding an old fiddle with busted strings, how often would you be replacing strings on your own fiddle that you use on a daily basis?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for your question. And so, first off, I still kind of experiment with strings. I prefer the dominance, but I'm trying some other things out. And I also have helichords on some fiddles. So I have, right now I recently restrung this fiddle with helichords and then this one with something called obligatos, just to try something different. But I've traditionally liked dominant strings. So before deep diving into the question, I will say that all these strings are decent strings, and that I think that just to be wary of getting too I'll just say that I'm not an extreme gearhead. Like I kind of like in general the sound of all these. There's some things I prefer, but I think that the important thing if you're learning is to focus on your tone and how you're playing in order to get your tone. And you know, if you have helichords or dominants, they're pretty decent strings, and if they're new, then you know what, and you're still having difficulty with the sound, then it may be the instrument, or maybe you just need to work on your tone. So all that said, this one has got, let's see, this one has got helichords, and then this one has got obligatos. I don't have one with dominance currently, and you mentioned that in your question when you submitted it, that a lot of people don't like the sound of the dominant E string. And so I kind of wish I had one to test it, because I've never really had a real problem with it. But I know that sometimes when I buy the strings, they give me a Purastro E. And so I'm actually, thanks for asking the question, I want to get a Purastro E. This is but anyhow, in terms of the difference, it's subtle. Like right now on this fiddle, I have a string called obligato, and they're slightly darker sound. But it's not going to be a very good test, because if I play the other fiddle is just a different instrument as well. So, but I'll play it anyway. This is helicore. So I don't know how well it translates right now, but it's a bit of a sharper sound. Kind of a crisper sound. And then I'll go back to the other. It's a little like smoother, softer of a sound. Can you hear that, Tom? Can you hear the difference between the two?
Yeah, it sounds different, but I've never tried the same or two different strings on the same fiddle. So then it's always hard to compare because probably the fiddle makes more difference than the string does.
Yeah, right. So if you really wanted to be scientific about it, you would, and you had the time and patience,
And the
you would,
money. And the
well,
money,
yeah,
yes.
that too. You would play, you would maybe just record, like you get it, the exact same things, maybe do a few different things like a scale, a tune, and a bowing thing and then when you change the strings, do all those same exact things and compare and see what you like better. It may be worth it if you do it over time, like to like take the strings immediately off and then put a new one on in order to do this test. If you have the time for that, then cool. Otherwise, maybe record some simple thing with whatever strings you're using, and then when you decide to try a different set of strings, record the same things and compare and just see what you like. So it's kind of a trial and error, personal kind of thing to experiment with. You also asked, I think, when it was time to change the strings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, it was like I'm a little lazy with changing strings, but I did do some research and found that like one recommendation is after 120 hours of playing. So it really depends on just how much you play. If you're playing 4 hours a day, you're going to need to change it sooner than if you play half an hour a day. It'll just depend. And you'll know that the strings are definitely far gone if they start to unravel a little bit. That's a sign that like it's going to break any minute. Also, you'll start to notice that the tone is just sort of dead sounding. And I'll just end this. Well, I mean, there might be follow-up questions, but in my research to answer your question, my favorite answer for when to change the strings is when you need a new outlook on life. So, anyway, it's like getting a new haircut. It really is. It's like getting a haircut because you're like, oh wow, I've got a spring in my step when you have it. But you actually, the sound will be really brighter and more vibrant.
Okay. And just a quick follow-up I just thought of. I've got an electric fiddle I used in the basement just to make some noise sometimes, with a couple pedals and whatever. Would string selection on an electric fiddle be different thought or different consideration than on an acoustic?
Probably, but I'm not really sure like what would be best. I play electric fiddle too, and I use helichords for the my electric.
Yeah.
But I have not really done any in-depth experimentation. I just sort of just settled on that, and I couldn't even explain why. So I would just say the same thing, like if you really want to get particular, and some musicians are very like guitarists, and they're very particular about the strings, and I sort of am, but I've just found things that I like, and so I don't feel that I kind of focus on other aspects of playing versus the strings, because the strings I have seem to work.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for your questions. Anybody have follow-up questions? Frank's fiddle? Frank, oh yeah, try to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to when I have to start messing about with strings and bows and things, because at the moment mine's all okay. But I am going to have to change it at some point. I'm fortunate because I live in Portugal, because the fiddle's not a big industry out here. So you go into a music shop and say you want some fiddle strings, and you have the ones that they've got in the shop. So there's not a fantastic selection. Whatever they've got, you have. But I am going to go back to the UK in the new year, and I do want to go and do get some equipment back there where there's more choice. And my question, following on from what Tom was saying, really, I suppose, is for me, I've been playing for 9 months now. I'll be playing for a year when I go back after Christmas. is it worth me getting into any kind of discussion with a salesman who may or may not know what they're talking about at my level of playing, or should I just buy some strings? It's not. I don't really notice the difference in the sound. Is it worth me even bothering with that and to just buy some strings until I actually notice what the difference is in the sets of strings?
Yeah.
Is it worth me having the conversation? Really, is my question.
I would try to get decent strings. I would try to get it. It's worth it. I would try to get.
But does decent mean more expensive, or is there?
Yeah, like I don't know like what the cheapest string you can get is, and maybe somebody out there has a price thing they can throw down real quick. But dominants are a little bit more expensive. They're maybe like $60 a set, something like that.
Right.
Am I wrong? I don't know offhand, and Helicores I think are cheaper, but I don't know. I think it's worth it. You'll notice a difference.
Okay.
I think if you go much cheaper than that. But I haven't experimented with a lot of cheap strings. I've just kind of like, I think when I was learning, my teacher had dominant strings, and I just sort of have followed that, since forever. So I think a follow-up point to what you're saying has to do with your fiddle and the quality of your instrument. And it's, even though you guys are beginners or intermediate or whatever, it's important to have a decent instrument, right? Because otherwise it's going to be that much harder and less fun. And so, it's important to have something that's a nice sounding instrument. You don't have to break the bank, but as the larger point is like, just because you're a beginner doesn't mean or you have to play a crappy fiddle. It's almost reason for you to play a better fiddle in a way. So, okay, yeah, I don't know what those preludes are. So, but anyhow, okay, so cool. Let's see. I had one other question that was submitted that I put some time into that I would like to answer, and then I'll open up the floor for a short bit. So, this is from.
Jason
Yes.
and Tara has a question. She's raising the hand.
Tara. I think I answered, hold on a sec. Tara, wherever you are, I answered your question. Oh yeah, sorry. Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Sorry, I had a follow-up to the string question. Can you tell us what your reasons are for having more than one fiddle?
I was lucky enough to receive them from somebody. It's kind of true, but I do use them for different things. But right now I have 3, and but I would like to have more than one. And one big reason is that, like, if I'm tuning them differently, so that a lot of times I like last year I was doing a lot of Appalachian lessons and using sawmill tuning, and so it was nice to have a fiddle just in the sawmill tuning, which is instead of G D A E, it would have been A E A E, and so that way I can just pick it up and start playing it. But then if I want to play in standard tuning, I have the other fiddle handy that I can play, just for other more standard tuning things. So that's probably the main reason I like having the two, is for tuning things. And they also have different sounds and different, I like the different sounds as well. But main reason is different tunings, and it's something I want to explore more of. So anyhow, like you could have sawmill tuning A E A E. You could also do it D A D A, and so right there that could be 3. That could take up the 3 fiddles I have.
Okay.
Like I have so just to experiment with that. I also have a viola, which I used to play more of, but then to kind of play devil's advocate to my own answer, if I just had one good fiddle, I'd probably be fine. I don't think that it's necessary to really have. It's just sort of like I've inherited a couple. I inherited two fiddles through the grace of the universe, and then I bought this one from a friend, and I happen to have them now. Maybe I won't tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for your question.
Sure.
So let's see. I want to get to a question from, let's see. This question is from Sarah in Austin, Texas. I'm not sure she's here, but I put a lot of thought into it, and so I want to answer it. And her question is, how do you play faster while sounding good? So I just have some tips to get you started on playing faster and keeping your sound up. The first is to separate what your each hand does. So you would work on the speed of your bowing separately than on your left hand. So maybe we can start with something really simple, but you would use a metronome. So I'll just tap my foot for now to indicate a metronome. And then you could do other things that are more right hand focused and speed those up. So maybe like slurring 4. All right. And then you could also focus on speeding up left hand things like scales or variations on scales. And maybe even do it without bowing, like just finger it. All right. So you would start by separating those two elements, and then that kind of is the first step for doing speeding things up. And then another thing you could do, say you're working on tunes, you could start by identifying what is the hard part of a tune, and then speed that up. So you may have, let's say you're doing Lonesome Fiddle Blues. There's a part in there that's really hard. So you would start by really taking that, and you do something counterintuitive. You slow it down with a beat. Well, you'd start with a comfortable mid-tempo. And then with the beat, slow it down as much as possible. Even slower, until it's ridiculously slow. This is a counterintuitive step. And then once you've slowed it way down, you gradually speed it up. And then you'll get to a speed, and you'll take note of it on your metronome. And I should back up and say that the metronome is a very useful tool for speeding it up, because you can keep track of your fastest tempo and return to it. So anyhow, let's say you find that the fastest tempo is 100 beats per minute for this little part. Then what you do is play the entire tune at that speed, whatever this is. And then by the time we get to this, you're okay. So why do that? Well, because this is what you don't want to have happen. You don't want to play the whole tune at a faster tempo, and then when you get to this hard part, you have to slow it down. That's the point. You pick the parts that are hard, work on speeding those up, and then whatever the maximum is, you can do all of those parts, you do the rest of the tune. Okay? So in short, using a metronome is a great tool for speeding up a tune. And I really want to do I have envisioning like a series of lessons all on timing. So if any of you guys have any questions right now on timing or speeding up, feel free to ask, as it might help me down the line. Any questions related to that? Mary from New York City here. Oh, cool. So please unmute yourself and ask your question. Oh wait, unmute yourself. Sorry, I don't know if I can. I'm not hearing you. I apologize. I'm gonna ask, I got your question. It was just thought it'd be cool if you asked, but for some reason I'm not hearing you. So you asked about the drone box, right? Okay. So if you have the chat going, you can ask follow-up questions. But basically, you asked me like what this was, and so I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. It's a drone box called the Ragini. I bought it from India. It's this weird little thing, and you can set different. You can set the different keys. All right, and then it's just a handy thing for using drones. And the reason I like using it is that sometimes when I practice, I like to get away from the computer, get away from my phone, and just play maybe with some sheet music or just work on exercises, because for the site, I'm on the computer like all day long, and it's just, I really appreciate the break. So this is, I use this, and then if I don't have access to this, I have an app on my phone called iTabla, which I use, which also has beats, so that's nice. And basically, that's what I use. And somebody at the last office hours asked, well, why do you even bother using a drone? What's the whole point of it? And I just wanted to go over that again a little bit, which is that it basically is just a very, I think the best reason to do it, well, there's two main reasons. One is that it makes practicing technical things more enjoyable. You know, if you have the drone, playing a scale is going to feel and just, I'm much more inclined to just do scales for like 30 minutes, something ridiculous, just because it sounds so nice with the drone. The other main reason for using a drone is that it's a great way to work on your tuning. So you'll really be able to tell when you're off. And then you can tune each note as you go. So I can tune the next note, which is B, by changing the drone note. So it's a way to more directly learn how to play in tune than using like a visual aid like an electronic tuner, which can be helpful. But anyway, thanks for your question, Mary. Do you have any if you have a follow-up, just write it in the chat. I apologize for whatever reason I couldn't hear you speaking, but okay. Daniel asked how to sign up for group lessons. Daniel, those are available to all paid users. And so if you could just email me directly, Daniel, I'll tell you more about how group lessons work. So, okay, so now just I'll just take a moment to see if anybody out there has any just random questions that you have. And I don't know, do a little speed round here for like 10 minutes or so. I see from Dave Brown, I know you have held us back on playing with tremolo, but I'm feeling like starting to do it. Can you suggest some very basic starter exercises? Okay, so tremolo, just so people who aren't familiar with the term, is playing light, quick strokes. And Dave, you might have to let me know, like, I'm not sure how I've held anybody back from doing this. Like, I kind of something I teach beginners right away is to Play with tremolo bow as a way to get your wrist involved. Oh, not tremolo. Okay. All right. Why don't you rephrase your question? Vibrato. Okay. So some starter exercises for vibrato. Okay, vibrato question, not tremolo. So I'm just about to make the vibrato lessons. They should come out later this year or early next year. But the starter exercise, Dave, is to practice sliding. So, and probably starting with your second finger. Because what sliding is doing is it's like a little pitch shift, and that's what vibrato is. And then basically once you get comfortable with sliding, you do it in a regular pattern, like so. So starting on D2. You make your slides smaller and smaller. So you may want to start with a bigger slide, like sliding D2 to D low 2. And then make your slides less small. I mean, make it smaller and smaller slides. And then that's a prep work for vibrato. Now, vibrato is actually a similar pitch shift, but it's done a little differently than a slide of moving your finger. You're more rolling your finger. And so what we'll do is then you'll, the other main exercise you can do in the meantime till I have them up officially is to hold the fiddle in mandolin or guitar position and just practice rotating the finger on the tip and just getting that motion. It's much easier to do it in this position. And then when you go to doing it here, it'll be a little harder, and then you can just start trying to do it. And so for now, I would alternate between just trying to do the motion without even playing, trying to do it with it, and then if you get stuck and you're frustrated, just try to do the micro sliding, I call it. So maybe 4 notes per bow, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. And so hopefully, Dave, that'll keep you going for a couple months until I get the proper lessons up for vibrato. All right. Anybody else? Let's see. Okay. They don't see anybody else asking, so I'll just ask you a question. How many people are taking the practice challenge right now? If you are, just, yeah, nice. All right. All right, cool. Good to have you all on board. You guys are, is everybody hanging in there okay? Anybody facing any major challenges to playing every day? Let me know in a chat if you have any challenge, but it's good. I'm glad everybody's doing it. And thanks to everybody who's posted videos too. That's been really cool. All right, Frank, sounds good. You could just do it, now too. You could just start now and just do however many days you can. Okay. So, okay, everybody, looks like that's it. Thank you all for your questions and also for your patience with the technical difficulties. And I'm glad that you hung out while I figured that out. And I was ready for the next one. So anyhow, if you have any follow-up questions, just email me. I'm going to end the session. And just remember one last announcement. I'm going to do an open practice session on Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So hope to see you then. And does anybody want to hang out and chat? Should I leave the Zoom meeting open? Okay, looks like Ken does. I'll just leave it open, and whoever wants to hang out and chat, if it's a lot of you, I can break you into groups, but for now I'll just let it go. Thank you again, everybody, and I'll say goodbye for now, and we'll see you soon. Keep on fiddling. All right, bye. Go to FiddleHed.com for a progressive, step-by-step course outline, color-coded tabs, play-along tracks, sheet music, and much more. Thanks for watching the videography. Excellent. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.